Friday, October 5th, 2018, maneco64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So it's Friday evening here in London. Okay, we're starting a live stream looking at the markets, central banks, the debt, which is something they never mention. They always talk about how well the economy is doing, all the phony statistics. And I'll also be taking questions from the viewers, just a chat. I'll be looking also at the Economist magazine, which I bought today. Usually don't buy it, but once in a while I do. They're talking about China's design on Europe. But there's other things in there that I'd like to talk about. So let's see who's showing up. NASDAQ SC. He asked me if I was doing a live stream later on today, and I am, I guess. Hi, What a Shambles. Rick Levens, Sash Media is here. IK from Dublin is here. Jamal Hunt thinks Ripple is going to 20,000. Well, that would be a big move. It's possible. Bitcoin went from cents to 20,000. I know a lot of people consider XRP the banker's crypto, but who knows? You need to have an open mind. I'm not too keen on Ripple, but if you think you can make money on it, buying Ripple, I'm not going to stop anyone. Rick, you're welcome. Yeah, thank you for the the feedback. These says sold tech stocks and bought VIX. I don't know when you did that, but if you did that last week or a few days ago, you're probably doing okay. Yeah, Stephen, I don't know why silver has VAT and gold doesn't. Probably because they don't want people to protect themselves, and silver is a lot cheaper. So it would be within reach of the general public. So they want to discourage people from owning silver, monetary silver. So that's why they do it. That's the only thing I can think of, unfortunately. Hopefully that will change. Who knows? VJQXZZ, any thoughts on the spying chip the Chinese put? I saw headlines about that story. I haven't really read in detail about it. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot going on. China, even the economists talking about China, China's design on Europe. The thing about China is that we in the West have been playing ball with China. What does that mean? Well, we've been buying their stuff for 20 years or more, cheap. We've been exporting all our factories over there. We've been taking advantage of their cheap labor. They've been earning, working hard and earning in euros or dollars or pounds. So they have to do something with the money. The Economist is saying China has design on Europe. But, does the Economist expect China just to hold government bonds and do nothing with the money and let it become worthless? So I don't know about the story about China. Do I believe this story about the Chinese spying? It could be true. I don't know. There could be, some people think China might be the people now selling treasuries, and that's why treasury yields even touched 325 today. So who knows? These has put a funny emoji about XRP. Thank you, Capital C. Hi, Button Banger. Robert Brown from Alabama. Hi, Robert. Ben Gray is here. Jamal Hunt. No, not the price, but 20,000 in holdings. Oh, I see, Jamal. You've got 20,000 Ripple. Well, hopefully we'll go up to 20,000 as well in price for you. That would be nice. Hector from Chile. Nice to see people from South America as well here. Billy, yeah. Hey, Billy. Dax is saying hello to you while he's asleep as usual. Well, he's not asleep. He's just snoozing. Yeah, VZE, the USA could definitely make gold illegal as bullion or to hold as an investment. They did it from 1933 to 1975. Uh, I personally don't think they're going to go towards that, though. They did it in 1933 because it was part of the monetary system. Right now, it isn't. Capital C, short-term bonds. Yeah, the short-term bonds, treasuries, they're called bills. They're 1 month bill. I think they even might have 2 month bills, but usually it's 1 month, 3 month bills, 6 month bills, and 1 year bills. If interest rates are rising, it's better to buy short term bills. Why? Because they mature and then you can reinvest at a higher rate. If you buy a 10-year treasury, you have to wait 10 years to reinvest it, and by then or a couple of years, and by if rates have risen in that period, you will have lost a lot of your capital. So yeah, in a rising interest rate bear market scenario, bills or any bond from 3 month to a year, or maybe even more, a 2 year, it might do okay as well. But yeah, anything between 3 months and a year is okay, and you can just keep reinvesting at higher rates. The other thing that you have, it's called a floating rate bond. Floating rate bonds, the coupon floats. So if interest rates go up, floating rate bonds do well as well. They don't do well when interest rates are going down, but they might become more popular. Floating rate bonds. So there you go. Why is J.P. Morgan buying silver? Some people think it's because they need to cover a big short position they were holding for Bear Stearns. It could be for clients, or it could be for them. Maybe they know something we don't. I couldn't say. I mean, I wish I knew. Maybe they know that silver, in the end of the day, is money, and if the system is going to come under threat, they want to hold silver, and they probably have a lot of gold as well. Africa will be to China what China was to the U.S. I'm not too sure about that. I think Africa is more for the natural resources. I don't think Africa is as organized or as entrepreneurial or capitalistic as the Chinese. China has a long history of being an economic power, going 1,000, 2,000 years. Africa, I've never really seen Africa develop that well. I think they're more for the resources. I could be wrong. Uh, Chris Weiner, hi Chris. Nobody ever talks about it. China does that chip, then everybody freaks out. Hmm. Yeah, and I'm sure it's not only China who's doing the spying. I'm sure the United States, the UK, France, Germany, everyone else is doing it. It just seems to be a little bit of a war between, kind of a trade war, financial war going on right now, in my opinion. Good evening, Oliver. Is the market heading for another correction? You mean the stock market? Well, let's see where we're now. The Dow is down 209, so down just under 1%. It has been down as much as 300. Yesterday was down about 350 and rallied to finish down 200. It looks like the powers that be, the PPT or Working Group on Financial Markets, are trying to calm things down. If it gets out of hand, they come in and buy it. But the bonds, the bonds is what's really interesting. The 10-year yield is at 323 right now. It touched 325 earlier on today. And, looking at the charts here, it looks bullish in terms of yields, which is not a good thing. We let's have a look here. We ended last week. Well, last week we almost went back to 3%, and to think that we are now at almost 325, that's a huge, quick spike in yields, and that's the problem with the bond. The bond market will be a problem, and I've said that before. And I've seen an article in Zero Hedge saying that the problem the bond market poses is if yields or rise too sharply, too quickly in a short amount of time. That could be a problem for the economy, the financial system to adjust to. So yeah, that is worrying. And all other bond markets are rising. The Italian is gone off, the headlines, but we closed at three. Let's see, Italian bonds closed at really high levels today as well. Let's have a look. Where is it? I've got a lot of windows here. BTP closed at 342, which is the highest closing level in years. The key level there, I think, is going to be around 350, 3.5, 3.51. The Italian budget is not even come out yet. I think it's going to come out at the middle of the month. And I think the EU has kind of poo-pooed the budget so far. So there's a bit of conflict there. Pablo, yeah, the rising bond yields do correlate with the quantitative tightening because, yeah, they do to some extent because the Fed is selling treasuries. So when you sell something, when you start selling treasuries and also the general public and speculators know that the Fed's going to be selling, they front run the Fed. And when you sell bonds, there's more, potential sellers than buyers. The yield, the prices go down and the yields go up. Anders, how big is Danske Bank scandal? Do you think it's too big to fail? Jail? Could it drag down some bigger banks? Definitely. I'm not sure if I think Danske Bank might be in the BIS SIFI list. If it is, then it should be safe. So too big to fail. It is a big scandal. I think it's a couple of $100 billion, isn't it, of money laundering. But I think Danske Bank is not the only bank doing that. It's probably just the tip of the iceberg. Let me check. I mean, SIFI banks. Maybe I can find here. SIFI banks list. See Danske Bank. Where is it? Here we go. Where's that list? Well, actually, Danske Bank is not in the SIFI list. So let me see here. Oh, yeah, it is. Sorry. It is in one. It is in the list, but it's not as important as the SIFI. But it is in a. It's called SIB. I'm not sure what that stands for, but definitely, something to keep an eye on. I used to. I did deal for one of the guys I worked with in the futures market in the mid '90s. He was actually my boss. He was Danish. We worked together, and then a few years later, he moved to back to Denmark, and he worked at Danske Bank, and we did deal with them in futures on Danske Bank Copenhagen. Capital C, if the banking system collapses, would it be easy for people to trade their gold and silver? Find it hard to believe how normal people can use precious metals to buy groceries. Well, the banking system could collapse. If MasterCard and the payment system doesn't collapse, you can use the Glint card, which I have, which you basically hold grams of gold outside the banking system in Switzerland in the vault. So if the system does collapse, but MasterCard and debit cards work, you could still use it. But then again, I do see people accepting gold and silver if the banking system collapses. But I think if it does collapse, don't think they will shut it down. They'll just limit withdrawals, and so I don't think it will be a problem. But if it is that extreme, I'm sure people would rather accept gold and silver than a currency that doesn't exist anymore. We've never been through it, but you're saying that you don't see people doing it. But when people are desperate, if you go to visit a farmer where you can buy food, he will not accept paper money, but I'm sure a farmer will recognize gold and silver and accept it in exchange. Danny Djokovic, last time it dropped violently, they stopped it. They'll do it again. What are you talking about? Stocks, bonds? I'm not sure what you're talking about, Danny. Need to be a bit more specific. From what where I'm looking now, the bond markets everywhere around the world now, they're starting to follow the U.S. It's not looking good. I know we've had false alarms, but this is looking more and more real to me. This rise in yields. Right now, they're still have the stock market under control. We had these non-farm payroll numbers. They're still talking about how the economy is great, even though they never touch upon how much debt is being created to keep that economy going. Good evening, Hyrule Legend. Nice to see you. Yeah, I guess SIB is Systematic Important Bank. But SIF is different. It's Systematic Important Financial Institution. I think the SIFs are more protected than the SIBs. They're kind of second rate, too big to fail, the SIBs. What are Americans going to do once the 5-cent nickel turns in what happened to copper penny to? Are you asking about if the price of nickel, the content of the nickel coin is worth more than 5 cents? I think that was happening back in the 2007, 2008. A lot of people were actually buying nickels, and then selling, melting the nickel down to get more for, it's like an arbitrage. That is possible. What the mint will do is they'll just mint nickels with even cheaper and cheaper metals, so that the cost doesn't go above the face value. David Moore. So I think silver. Yeah, I mean silver and gold are being held right now. You can see that. I don't think they're going to be. I think silver's bottomed, and so have gold. So right now they're keeping it in this range. It's like they're keeping coiling a spring, and once it breaks above 15, I think we could see a sharp move higher. Well, as we speak here, we got 15 minutes to the close. And you can see that the President Trump and his Treasury lackeys are buying the stock market. Trump is no different from any other president. So he's not making America great again. He's just indebting America, and they're buying the Dow. It's down only 150 now. only 0.5%. We'll have to see how much further up they get before the close. Gold is above 1,200, 1202.70, so up 0.25%. Silver is 1463, up 5, up 1/3%. So the metals are still doing well, but it looks like the manipulators are coming in again towards the close. We'll check what the markets are doing in a few minutes. Yeah, copper has been money for many, many thousands of years, I would say. This is cool, Mario. In an old video, I remember you saying that they wanted to recruit you. Was wondering if you could do more detail about what? Why did they contact you? How? Well, what do you mean by they? I don't remember that statement. Who you mean by they? Matthias Hartman, the reason why the Fed's not buying bonds is because they've told the market for the last 2 years or 18 months that they're actually selling the bonds they have. So if they start buying, they will lose complete, credit. They lose credibility, and it will be probably even worse. So right now, what they're doing, the Fed, is called quantitative tightening, the opposite of QE. They're selling off the treasuries they have in their portfolios. So I wouldn't put it out of the past them that they're actually in the markets trying to control, but they're not supposed to be buying. That's the problem for them now. And according to them, the economy is doing great. So we'll see. No, the Fed isn't buying bonds right now. They're selling. And they're supposed to sell 600 billion treasuries, from fiscal year 18-19. So from October this year to October next year. And the other thing as well, the United States is going to run, the Treasury is going to run a $2 trillion deficit. So good luck with that. That means they're going to have to sell even more treasuries, the U.S. Treasury, and the Fed's going to be selling as well. I think it could be a cocktail for a disaster. Hyrule Legend, is it true that the bank for international settlements only count precious metals when assessing a country's ability to pay their sovereign debt? It could be. I mean, the up until a few years ago or a decade ago, the BIS kept their books in gold. That was their currency. Now they don't do that anymore. But yeah, they could probably use gold as an assessment for the health of some other countries. China is trying to own farmland around the world. Well, they're buying farmland. Why not? What would you do if you had, trillions of dollars of paper, paper money? I would probably be trying to do the same. And we shouldn't have a go at them because we've been buying all their stuff they'd be, working to produce really hard on the cheap and giving them pieces of paper. So I'm not surprised. So let's have a quick look at the markets. Right now, the Dow's down 160. So yeah, it's still down on the day. Let's see, the U.S. 10-year yield, 323. So it's going to be not a good week for the bond market. Yeah, gold is an eternal yardstick, says Derek. I agree with him on that. It's been a standard of value and wealth for over 2,000 years. That's what people don't understand. People like Jeff Christian, who says, "Oh, it's just an investment," but there's a reason why it's just an investment. Rosso, with a hammer and sickle. EU just refused the Italian financial maneuver. I just tell you this: if Monday Italy opens in gap down, we go down to the bottom. Yeah, I saw that. Is that just come out, Russell? I saw earlier because Italian bonds didn't do well today. We closed at really at low, near the lows of the week. Italian bonds, so I wouldn't be surprised. So not only U.S. Treasuries in trouble, but also, uh, Italy is coming back to the fore. So yeah, we could go through 3.5% very easily. The 10-year BTP, which is the Italian Treasury equivalent, closed at 342. And I remember trading Italian futures in the mid 90s, and they had a contract called the Euro Lira contract, 3-month interest rate contract, Euro Lira. It was in lira, and the rate then in the mid 90s was above 10%. So it's normal for Italy to have high interest rates, not only Italy, but other countries. The rates we have now are historically very low. Rick H. Trump is here to destroy the world and rebuild it in his image. You could be right. I don't know if it's going to be in his image, but it's going to be different. Turkish lira. Let's see where we are in the Turkish lira. Yeah, we're back above 6. The dollar is down today, though, about 0.5%. So the Dow down 162. They've gotten it up a little bit, but the Nasdaq 100 that's down 1%, down 77. It was down as much as 170 points. So they've bought that back quite a bit. Oh yeah, I want to talk because I put the title of the live stream Fed central banks but I was listening today because unfortunately on the Bloomberg page where I can see the 10-year yield, they're now putting a little screen with people interviewing the people on the Bloomberg TV, and they're interviewing the president of the New York Fed, John Williams, and listening to that guy. He said that having 2% inflation is a good thing. So there you go, central bankers. New elections in Italy. Yeah, it's going to get even more. The other interesting thing about Italy and their fiscal situation is that I think they still have to sell about 60 billion euros worth of BTPs in the last 3 months of the year. So that's going to be and the other thing that I just read, actually, I bought The Economist today. Don't do it very often, and I highlighted a few stories here, and there's one about Italy which I read, quite a big story, and this is what they say here. This is from The Economist. The average maturity of Italy's government debt stock is close to 7 years, but by the end of October, 2 ratings agencies, S&P and Moody's, are due to review their classification of Italian bonds. Any downgrade could raise the government's borrowing costs, soaking up cash it had planned to spend. So that's the other thing. I'll bet you S&P and Moody's are gonna downgrade Italy, and it's gonna get even worse. That's maybe also already priced in a little bit, but that's another thing that's I highlighted here. I'll show you the story. They had a whole thing on Italy. Di Maio tries to take charge. You see, there you go. Oh yeah, you mean the president? I would say that Draghi is the president of Italy, not the president of the republic. Draghi is in charge, right? And Draghi went to a Jesuit school, I think, as well, just like Mark Carney did. You know, Draghi went to a Jesuit school in Rome. Draghi went to a Jesuit school in Canada. I think he's from Alberta. I'm not sure. Oh, the other thing I want to talk about the Economist is that they have at the back of the Economist this economic and financial indicators. This is how it looks like. And I looked at some numbers, and I'll talk about them because, you know, we hear about how the U.S. economy is doing really well, how GDP is running, you know, at a annual rate of 4.2% in the third, you know, in the latest quarter, and how everything's great. But then, you know, you look at the under the surface, because I've made videos about how when you calculate GDP, you also add government spending, which in my opinion is bogus, because government spending is not really production, gross domestic product. You know, government spending is when government taxes the private sector and takes that money away from the private productive sector. And to call that, you know, production, this seems completely bogus to me, but that's how they calculate GDP. So they add government spending. So my theory or my view is that if a government is running a huge budget deficit, which means they're overspending, that means that if they ran a balanced budget, the economy would be a lot less weaker. So, for example, and this is from the Economist, budget balance percentage of GDP for 2018. Show it to you here. It's right here, and I highlighted it in yellow. Okay, so for the United States for 2018, the budget deficit is 4.8%. So if you're running, you know, if the economy is running at 4.2% growth of GDP, let's say you take out, you know, this deficit of 4.8 from 4.2, you actually get a negative 0.6% growth of the private economy. So what I'm trying to say that is that when you hear Larry Kudlow, Donald Trump, you know, cheerleading the U.S. economy, it's just because it's only because, you know, the government is spending like a drunken sailor, and if you look at the forecast for GDP for 2018 as a whole, it's 2.9, and you take out 4.8 budget deficit, the economy is shrinking really in the private sector by 1.9%. On the other hand, you know, people go on about Europe, you know, about the euro collapsing, the EU is going to fail and everything, you know, the euro is going to implode. But the euro area, which is the countries that have the euro, they have a GDP growth for 2018, 2.1%. US is 2.9. Yeah, that sounds better. But the EU is only running a budget deficit of 0.7%, unlike the United States, which is running a budget deficit of 4.8. So the euro area is actually growing the private sector, in my opinion, by 1.4%, while the US is actually shrinking by 1.9. So you tell me, you know, what's the country that, or economic area that's doing better? That's why, you know, you should never, you should always look under the surface, in my opinion. Eric says government deficit spending equals growth. Growth is needed to keep the global Ponzi going. Well, Eric, what I'm trying to say that it isn't growth, because governments don't produce anything. Governments only tax. So how can that be growth? They're taking away from the private economy and they count it as growth. It doesn't make sense. It's like double counting, in my opinion. Anyway, it's not the right growth. Rolf Bob, the Danish money laundering Danske Bank operation, the thing is going to blow up. Several Swedish banks are involved. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, the Scandinavian banks are, tied together. Probably some German ones as well. And it's like a domino effect. It could be interesting. To whom is China in debt? I'm not sure. Probably uh, creditors from other countries, to domestic market as well, Chinese people. Hi, MRJI78. Nice to see you from Dublin. Yeah, people are saying here mostly to themselves. That's right. It's like the Japanese. That's why they've been able to keep things going. The Japanese are big savers. And that's why the currency there hasn't collapsed as much. I'm Marlene Barr from New Zealand. Nice to see you. Must be fairly early over there on the Saturday, I guess. So I was looking at these budget deficits, and I highlighted the countries that have a surplus. So we'll go through. Let's see. Hong Kong has a 2% budget surplus. South Korea, 1%. The biggest surplus is Norway, 5.4% budget surplus. Switzerland has a 0.9% budget surplus. Germany has a 1.7% budget surplus. The Netherlands, 1.3% surplus. And it's interesting because there's all this brouhaha about Italy having a 2.4% budget deficit for the markets reacting the way they have. But when I look here at these indicators, guess what country has a 2.4% budget deficit for 2018? France. So France is okay to have a 2.4% budget deficit, while Italy actually here has a 2% budget deficit of GDP. So it's interesting that France can have a 2.4% budget deficit, but when Italy budgets for a deficit of 2.4% of GDP, like they have now, the EU's up in arms, the markets sell the Italian bonds. It's really weird. Am I saying it's right to overspend? No, but looks like double standards. India is cashless, though they don't count. Chris Weiner, what's your opinion on Brexit? We don't hear much about that in the U.S. Well, I think Brexit has been, the process of getting it a deal and finalizing things, which have to be done before March, I think, next year or April. It's really been dragged out. I don't think Theresa May is really trying to. I think I saw a headline today or a video. Nigel Farage said that they're watering it down and we're going to get a really bad deal. So it's not going to be good. The public is, that voted to leave the EU is not going to get what it wants. Villiers asks, why are people investing in US bonds when they can get 9% interest rates on Russian 10-year? At least official inflation is the same. Well, interesting question, because US has 105% debt, government debt to GDP, and I think Russia only has like 30 or even less. A Russian government has very little debt. I think it's because of the the history of the Russian government finances. I think was it 1999? Russia, defaulted on its bonds, Russian crisis. So that's probably why there's a premium. And also with all the, you know, uh, sanctions being imposed on Russia, all the political animosity towards Russia, I don't think that helps the 9%. But it could be if you have access to buying Russian government bonds at 9%, it could be a good speculation. Why not? The same thing with Brazil. The only problem is that in Russia and Brazil, their currencies are a lot more volatile. So you could get 9% a year in Russian bonds, but then the ruble drops by 10% against the dollar or the euro, and then that wipes out your gains. Trump is a globalist. Yeah, I'm coming to the conclusion that he's not very much different than all the rest of the people that we've seen before him. I mean, he talks a good talk, but his actions are not too different. He's been belligerent. He's like threatening wars. He just kind of renamed NAFTA, really. He said a few months ago he was going to withdraw from Syria. Then the next week he said no. Some people say, oh, it's because the deep state is forcing him. But, well, if he's the president, he should, be in charge. Just have a drink here. Oh, we missed the close of the stock market. Let me see here how the stocks closed. So the Dow finished down 180, so 0.68%. And the S&P finished down 0.5%, 13.6 points. And the NASDAQ dropped 91 points, 1.16%. And the Dow closed at 26,447, which is below the January all-time high. So, we're still not, haven't confirmed that all-time high we saw a few weeks ago. We're even below the January high. Let's see where the 10-year yield is right now. 3.23, so it's still quite fairly high. Gold is right now almost 12.04, which is pretty good move late on the day. Silver 14.63. What else? Crude oil. Crude oil has come off from the highs, but it's still quite elevated, I would say. 74.30 WTI, and Brent is 84. Dennis Bull, do you think Trump will make mass arrests of deep state? Well, I've been hearing about that for over a year now. I haven't seen Hillary or Bill being doing a perp walk. I'll believe it when I see it. So as of now, lock her up hasn't materialized. Three-year. Let's see where the 3-year. Don't know if Bloomberg puts the 3-year. Let's have a look. Rates and bonds. I mean, I would look more at the 2-year. The 3-year is not really a benchmark. The 2-year note is 288. The 5-year is at 307. The 10-year 323. The 30-year 340. So that's where they are. So the other, even the the gilt, the UK 10-year yield is that closed at 172, and I think it closed last week at 158. So that's quite a big move. Since the end of the summer, we're up about 50 basis points in the UK. I know it's a low rate, but it's the move that is important. Kavanaugh, yeah, I'm not sure how that's going. The confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh, he'll probably get through. Oh, Timmy Chonga is here. Hi, Timmy Chonga. I haven't seen you. How are you doing? Yeah, Showman Eccleston Love, hit the like button. The other thing I'm doing now, I don't know if you guys seen, is I've got a promo code for a bullion dealer in London. Of course, it's easier to buy it from him if you're in the UK, but he also ships abroad. It's called goldinvestments.co.uk, and the promo code is maneco64. So I've been doing business with them. It's a family business. They've been, bullion dealers since 1980 in London, and reputable. Uh, by the way, about The Economist, I know it's a globalist magazine, of course. Sometimes you need sometimes to read what the enemy is saying, and this is what they say about Judge Kavanaugh, and I'll show it to you 1 second. Where they say whatever the FBI finds, Brett Kavanaugh's own testimony should disqualify him from America's highest court. And this is how they named the article. Kavanaugh. Not surprising, is it, that The Economist is against Brett Kavanaugh? And I'm not taking sides, but I'm just like showing it to you. Adam Anderson. Hi, Mario. What will the mainstream media blame for financial meltdown? Well, there's a lot of scapegoats that they could use. The trade wars. They could say that the trade wars slowed down growth. They could use the Chinese, card as well about selling treasuries. But in the end of the day, if there is a meltdown, it's only because it's a continuation of what happened in '08. They didn't fix anything. They didn't reform the banks, and they how can I say, they lumbered the system with even more and more debt. So they doubled down. But they won't say that, of course. But yeah, they'll have plenty of scapegoats, but not themselves, the central bankers or the banks. MRJI, Mario, I might be attending a coin fair soon. How can I tell the coins are good from a metal contact point of view, just from looking worthwhile buying? Well, I've been to coin expos or fairs before, and usually, the people who go there to sell the coins are reputable coin dealers. So, yeah, make sure if you're buying from someone, they have it's a business. They have a business card, and maybe ask around people who have been, to know about coins there. It's that's all I can tell you, really. Yeah, they papered it over in '08, Chris. That's right. High, Hyrule Legends. Well, inflation is at those levels. It's just the way they measure it. They lie about it. I mean, a lot of things I've noticed in the UK are going up by more than 5, 10, sometimes 30%. Nothing is the same thing in the US. So we do already have, and that's how they're screwing the middle class and the general public. So the 2% number is bogus. Well, Capital C says I wouldn't buy gold in a fair. I don't know what you mean by fair. It could be a gold coin exposition where you have dealers, numismatic dealers, coin dealers. That's okay. But if it's just like a boot fair and people are selling coins, yeah, I would be careful. Oliver Bristow, have you seen the video on YouTube by BBC from about a week ago about financial crisis? No, I haven't. I mean, I've noticed that in the last since yeah, in the last 6 weeks, the mainstream has been talking a bit more about that. I don't know if it's because it's the 10th anniversary of the that we had in 2018 of the '08 crisis, or who knows? But I haven't seen that one. Yeah, Wilbur Ross, he worked for the NM Rothschilds in New York, mergers and acquisitions, I think. Yeah, I mean, I would be comfortable with Trump, if he'd one of the first things he did was to abolish the Federal Reserve, which is what I think Ron Paul would have done. So I'll show you guys. I'll turn the screen a little bit here. I've got that's not a real Krugerrand up there. Gold Investments gave me that. It's like a paperweight, but it's like a replica, big Krugerrand. And below there, I've got my silver bar that I have. But yeah, that's not a real Krugerrand. It would be nice if it was a real Krugerrand. That would be about 5 kilos, I would say, which would be a lot of money. So I put it on the shelf there. You can see it on the live stream. On the videos, the angle of my camera, you can't see it. So we got some trolls coming up here, which I've gotten rid of. Trolls. Frank, Texas, Sons of Liberty. Hi, Frank. Nice to see you. It's funny, I was listening today to, have you heard of the Sons of Liberty? I'm not into, like heavy metal or hard rock, but Sons of Liberty, they have some really good, one of them is the Creature from Jekyll Island, where they criticize the Fed. I remember Alex Jones used to play that, the Sons of Liberty, and the Fed, but I never hear him talk about that anymore, though. Trump has a plan to reconstruct the Fed. Why would you want to reconstruct the Fed? The best thing he could do is to like end the Fed. So that in itself, just like, I'm sorry. It's not the way to go. I think we should not have a central bank anywhere in the world. It's against freedom. Central bank is like a monopoly. It's like OPEC. It's a cartel. It doesn't encourage freedom or competition. So what's Rolf saying? He's targeting the Rothschilds and the whole globalist New World Order. Large portions U.S. debt is about to be nullified. Trump will confiscate New World Order assets. Well, I would argue that he could nullify all the debt because it's all illegal. Why only parts of it? But it's a good start, but ideally it would be nice to see him end the Fed. Adu Hanif, you have such a great book collection. How much will you charge to visit your library? Yeah. Why do you want to reconstruct it? It's the Fed has been a drag and a parasitical institution since it was created. There's nothing to reconstruct. We'll go back to before 1913. No central bank. I don't understand what you're talking about, Rolf. I'm not trying to be hard on you, but we don't need the Fed. Yeah, Fader's a really interesting guy, Chris. And he got it. He the interest on fake money gets exponential, and in how can I say it? Devours the real economy. The real economy grows, but not exponentially. So you get to a point in which we're now, where the big bankers, the 1%, they own, almost the whole world, and the general public has got almost nothing. They've been able to do that because they've been able to issue money out of thin air and charge interest on it. And with the length of time they've been doing that, and compounding interest rates, and governments bailing them out and backing them, they've been able to grow exponentially while the economy stayed like that. So that's why people are getting angry. That's why people are, voting for populists, because they're getting screwed by this system, which is a central banking fiat money system. Oh, you're welcome, Chris. You're welcome, and thanks again for your, for the coins you sent to me. Yeah, Chris sent me some nice silver coins and a nice gold tenth of an ounce gold coin I received last week from the States. No, the Fed doesn't pay interest to savers, really. It pays it back to the Treasury, and the Treasury just goes and spends it. Yeah, honest money. Or, Chris, I would even argue, because Fader, the German economist, he argues that if the government has the power, the government could have the power to issue its own money, that interest-free money to fund government operations. You wouldn't even need to tax people. If the bankers can issue money out of thin air, at least the governments could issue money for projects, or for the public sector, and that would do as well. And the public would not have to pay a tax to fund the government. Frank, Texas, do you think a gold and silver standard be good for the economy in this monetary computerized age? For example, Bitcoin, or back it with gold and silver? Well, Frank, Texas, I think gold and silver, that's going to change very, very soon. It's already changing here in Europe. There's a card called Glint. So it's a debit card, or it's not a credit card, it's a debit card, MasterCard, and you can buy gold through Glint. I've met them. I'm gonna be endorsing them in a few weeks' time, and they basically hold the gold, physical gold in Switzerland, and you can buy it through an app, Android or Apple, app, and they allocate your gold in a insured vault in Switzerland, and you can spend either the dollar, euro, or pounds, or the gold with your card. So you could have a system, and they are now. They're going to open in the U.S., and they will also allow you to take delivery of the gold. And I think they're going to start. I'm going to make more videos about this, because I'm going to be working partly with them, and they're going to open in the U.S. Glint. So it's coming. It's not decentralized like Bitcoin, but it has the gold, and it will do. It will. You can ask for delivery. Yeah, Glint. You'll be able to use it anywhere in the world. You spend your gold anywhere, and unlike gold money, you don't have to sell the gold first and put it into fiat. You can spend the gold right away. I think it's an interesting concept. Am I going to put all my gold into Glint? No, but it could help, get the world into a sound money base. And I talked to the guys there. They invited me to go to their offices in London, and I was with them for 2 hours, and all of them were listen to my videos, and they're on the same wavelength as me, I would say. Just got off work. It's crazy what people will do for a piece of paper, says JJ. That's true. Yeah, unfortunately, that piece of paper right now still has, still ruling over us. Yeah, Rexman, I agree. Yeah, you do own it uh, with Glint, and as I said, I I do have a little bit of gold with them, and but I prefer physical. But if we're gonna go forward, uh, as in the world, we could move to sound money and have, they're not government, they're a private company. So if they screw you, then you can, they're out of business. So I would trust more them than, if the UK government said they're going to do that. But the gold in the vaults in Switzerland is in your name, not Glint's name. They're just doing the operation for you, and it's insured. The vault as well in Switzerland. But I agree with you. I prefer to hold it, but you do need trust sometimes in the world, or else we can't function. Do you see all banks being nationalized once people begin to really catch on to repression? It's possible. It's possible that you could have, or what you could have is you could have the banks be around, but they won't be able to issue loans. You have like investment banks, or if they are able to issue loans, uh, they will have to have the corresponding amounts of deposits from savers. I'm not sure if they'll be nationalized. I'm not sure you need to do that. I think as long as only the government has the power to issue the debt-free money, it's okay if you have private banks, as long as they don't do fractional reserve. Hope that that's clear. Lisa Murphy, come to San Francisco, but wear galoshes. Oh, I think that's, yeah. I think I saw that story about all the rubbish on the sidewalks. Is that what you're talking about, Lisa? Kevin, I don't think it will work. Keeping central banks, because they always work in the interest of the banks. So get rid of central banks. Yes, Pablo. I've got some gold in my Glint card. Not that much. And when gold goes up in pounds, the amount of that I have in my card in pounds goes up. Of course, the gold is always the same. If I have 10 grams, it's always 10 grams. But in my national currency, if gold goes up, it goes from 300 pounds to, it could go to 400. That's right. Shane Sturgis, I wish I had somewhere else to go like India. Britain is so divided. No one trusts anyone anymore. This is by design. Yeah, I think so. And I think people many years ago foresaw that, but they called them crazy. Hi, S. Walker. Nice to see you. Sanjit Neogi. BBC only shows negative news about India. BBC doesn't tell me it's a very good. I wouldn't know, Sanjit. I don't watch the BBC, so I don't watch any television news. So I would ignore the BBC, the British Brainwashing Corporation. War? I don't know, Ranko, if we're going to go into a big war. It seems like they are working hard at getting a war. Hopefully, they won't be able to. Marcus Aurelius, high interest rates are inflationary. Of course, they are. They are inflationary, especially if they're rising very quickly, as well as they've been this week or this year. Yeah, I think the 10-year yield started 2018 at 2.4%, and we are now at almost 325. That's a big move for a year, for 10 months. High flower beet, Bradbury pound. Yeah, that's pretty much like I was talking to Chris Weinert about the government issuing interest-free or debt-free money, and that was the Bradbury pound was a Bradbury was a UK Treasury official in the first half of World War One. He suggested the Treasury, issue UK Treasury notes to finance the war, and it worked really well. Debt-free money. World War One, yeah, that's right. Did I say World War Two? Sorry. Uh, yeah, but then by 1916, the bankers realized that was happening, and they weren't happy. So, as they're in charge, as always, the Treasury stopped issuing, their notes to finance the war, and yeah, it was the Bradbury pound. I've heard that the shadow chancellor, the guy from the Labour Party, who would be the Treasury Secretary equivalent of the UK if he was in government, that he's talked about having a Bradbury pound. So that's really interesting. Even though he's a Labour guy, who knows? So yeah, the Bradbury pound is, yeah, it's a way to finance government without having to raise taxes. Is it inflationary? It could be if the government raises, prints too much money for it, just to basically to spend on things that are more like luxuries or superfluous. If the government issues debt-free money for real world projects that will help the infrastructure of the economy, it could be a good thing. Mike TM, greenbacks. I mean, the greenbacks, Lincoln, it was much like the German economists. It was debt-free money issued by the U.S. government, and it worked. Maybe that's why they they killed Abraham Lincoln. Hori Fumio from Japan. Best wishes. Oh, thank you, Hori. Nice to see you here. Yeah. Ian Simpson says socialism. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people argue that it even started earlier, Ian, that it started actually also with the Glorious Revolution and the creation of the Bank of England. A lot of people argue that the New World Order crowd uh, are, were and are the instigators of this revolution, and that the first one was actually in England in 1648 with Cromwell. So actually, I would even go further back. As for Germany, I'm not sure if it's part of that, but the Bolsheviks definitely were. JJ, how can glint gold money operate in America? Uh, well, I don't know about gold money, but glint, the guy I met about a month ago, the head of business development, he's actually moved to the States. It's Colorado. That's where it's going to be headquartered. They're working already with like depositories in the States, and I think they've gotten the how can I say uh, they've gotten they've gotten the go ahead from the authorities. So, I don't think they would be starting a business in the United States. They're pretty serious people. And they would be starting a business if they thought they're going to be arrested. So, as I said, I'll keep you guys in in touch about it. Yeah, Mara Charles I warned his daughter and son about being made king by the bankers. That's right. And then, after they put England into loads of debt to the bankers from the revolution, they came in and they brought, William of Orange from Holland, and they started the central bank, the Bank of England, 1694. Oliver, I tend to agree with you as well. In a perfect world, I would have free market money. I wouldn't have government involved in money. But if we do get away from interest, because it doesn't make sense as well that the government has to borrow money from the bankers and the bankers create money that is backed by us out of thin air and charge us interest. That doesn't make any sense. That's folly as well. So, but if we're not going to go to non-governmental money, then I think that government, why couldn't the government issue money just like the bankers do? But instead of creating a national debt, they just issue it as, debt free or interest free. I don't see how different that is from what the system we have now. Personally, I would prefer to have very small government and let the market do everything else. But yeah, that's that's why I was talking about that, Oliver. Ian, I guess the U.S. has officially they have just over 8,000 metric tons of gold, but no, it's never there. There's never been an audit, so an independent audit. Bitcoin to go below 6,000. Yeah, well, right now Bitcoin is like in a range between trying to break above 6,800, 7,000. I think if it fails, we could go test 6,000. Who knows? I'm not, but it's not doing much at the moment. Bitcoin. Dr. O'Regan Metal. Hello, Maneko. Good to see you live. Nice to see you here, Dr. O'Regan. Uh, Usman Ali, when can we expect to see a reverse on gold and silver? I already think they've reversed. I think gold, the bottom was in August 15th and at 1160, sorry, and silver was about a month later. So they have reversed. Right now, they're kind of in a trading range. Yeah, that's right, Legend. 3,000 metric tons in 1959. Britain had now less than 300. Yeah, it's quite pathetic. Not good. That's a sign of decline of the power, and the wealth of the country. The fact that it's lost so much gold. Yeah, I saw that. I know that story about, the German and British troops playing football at Christmas during World War One. They stopped to play football, or as Americans call soccer. It was a unnecessary war, which led to a Second World War. Many people think it was planned, wasn't it? I think it was Albert Pike who wrote about there being three world wars years before World War One. So we're still waiting for the Third World War. Why is there only a few countries that make mint coins and bars? Probably because traditionally they've made it. And you notice that it's usually more of the developed countries that do that because they stuck to sound money for longer than they still do it. And you find that maybe some countries that have a big mining industry as well, they do that to help maybe that industry. Best website, Third World War is the Fiat War. It could be, it could be the financial war that we're witnessing. And maybe the end of the war will be when fiat collapses and sound money comes back, hopefully, or some kind of market money. MRJ, do you think really? I don't know who's behind Bitcoin, really. Some people speculate it's Alan Greenspan. Bix Weir thinks Alan Greenspan invented it. I don't know. Peter Schiff for US president. Well, actually, someone made a comment on one of the videos. They want Billy to run for president. I saw there's a dog somewhere in, I think it was Wisconsin or Minnesota, that he ran. He became mayor of a town in the U.S. A dog. He ran for mayor and he won. Maybe Billy might win. 2020. Vote for Billy. He won't do. He'll keep his promise. Yeah, Peter Schiff, he ran for Senate, didn't he, a few years ago uh, in Connecticut? Didn't make it, though. Capital C would vote for Billy. Yeah, I would vote for him, too. Yeah, I think Britain has an aircraft carrier, but it has no aircrafts. Billy 2024. No, I think 2020, isn't it? Or 2024. So I'm going to take a few more questions because we're running quite long here, an hour and 18 minutes. So I'll take 2 or 3 more questions and I'll call it a night. So let's just have a look and see where gold is trading right now, 1203. Yeah. In the aftermarket, the Dow is up 17, so not much happening in the markets. So, okay, guys, I'm going to call it a night. Thank you for showing up, for participating. And yeah, and if any of you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. Make sure after I download this live stream as well, you might want to share it. And if you want to donate to the channel as well, I'll put all the links below in the description. And if you want to buy gold as well, you've got the maneco64 promo code at goldinvestments.co.uk. And I'll talk to you guys later. Take care. Bye.